Dear Mayor Fegebank, dear Professor Ziemer, dear Mr. Kulikauskas, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an immense pleasure for me to welcome you all today in the Hansa office, under not only blue sky inside, but also outside, to today's event on digital transformation for urban sustainability. This event is in many respects quite special, mainly because it's the very first in-person 3D, as it were, event that is organized by the Hansa office since the pandemic began in 2020. For 2 years, we have not been able to host gatherings like the one today, where we can meet face-to-face, interact directly from person to person, and network again, which is such an essential part of our work here in Brussels. It is thus very appropriate that our second mayor and Minister of Science, Research, Equality and Districts of the free and Hanseatic city of Hamburg, Katharina Fegebank, has traveled especially to Brussels to mark this great occasion. Thank you for coming, Mayor. Moreover, it is also apt that with Professor Ziemer of the HafenCity University, a loyal and trusted friend, made her way back to the Hansa office. We already had the opportunity to show the great work she and her CityScienceLab are doing in Hamburg some years ago in 2017. Incidentally, also together with Senator Fegebank. At that time, the focus was on the project Finding Places, which aims at facilitating the organization of homes for refugees, an issue which, unfortunately, has become once more very relevant these days. However, we are not only looking back, as today's presentation has another novelty aspect to it. It is actually the first time that we organize an event in Brussels as part of the Hamburg Europe Week, which is organized every year around 5th of May, as the date when the Council of Europe was founded, and of course the 9th of May, which we celebrated only 2 days ago, as Europe Day to mark the day of the declaration of Robert Schuman at the Quai d'Orsay in 1950, and which is the founding moment of what is today the European Union. This premiere is mainly possible thanks to digital innovation that has experienced such a boost over the past couple of years and transformed our daily lives. Which brings me neatly back to today's topic and presenters, the CityScienceLab and UNITAC Hamburg, which are both at the forefront of digitalization and great examples of Hamburg's role as a hub of innovation and with global outreach. Before Professor Ziemer and Katja Schäfer tell you more about their project, I would like to hand over to our co-host, Paulius Kulikauskas from UN Habitat, which has very kindly organized this event jointly with the HafenCity University Hamburg and the Hansa office. Mr. Kulikauskas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Müller. Dear colleagues, Second Mayor, Minister. You know, United Nations Innovation Technology Accelerator for Cities is known to us at the United Nations, first and foremost, as a partnership. Partnership that focuses on enabling digital transition, urban technology, and then looking for quality of life through multi-level governance. So within our big policy framework, it serves implementation of several sustainable development goals, number 11, number 9, and number 10. I won't go into details. But as we are going to have so many discussions about the substance today, a little bit later, I would like to highlight UNITAC's importance for attaining Sustainable Development Goal number 17 on means of implementation and partnerships, as it is to us an innovative form of partnership among the United Nations and the HafenCity University. Why are the new types of partnerships so important to the United Nations? The immense needs of support to the developing countries, the slow pace of attaining the Sustainable Development Goals, it's all because of insufficient means of implementation, further reduced by multiple crises that we are experiencing, because of difficulties and financial sustainability of development and lack of local capacities. It is why this nexus of innovative approaches, technologies, and the new ways of partnership are of paramount importance in closing the gaps in delivering the Sustainable Development Goals and improving their means of implementation. Two more things very quickly, because all this can only be achieved by supporting multi-level governance approach, which is an underlying paradigm of the UNITAC strategy. Too often, we observe that development community is focusing on the local governments and decentralization, which is great, but not on making sure that all levels and sectors of governance work in concert. And along the policies and innovation and digital transformation are the crucial tools to provide evidence to the policies and to enable easier and more functional collaboration. My final remark is on the quality of life in the people-centered approach. Let us not forget that sustainability cannot be achieved without increase in economic productivity. That brings economic opportunities for all, including those most deprived and vulnerable. The underpinning development of human capacity, leading to improved productivity, coupled with better opportunities for gainful employment, are crucial to creating solutions for better quality of life for all, and leaving no one and no place behind. So please allow me to thank UNITAC and all the partners for the excellent work of the partnership and for helping to make it happen. And it will be my pleasure to offer the floor now to Katharina Fegebank, the second Mayor and Minister of Science, Research, Equality and Districts of the free and Hanseatic city of Hamburg, with which about 20 years ago I had the pleasure working for several years in urban regeneration. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I would really like to invite you to come back after 20 years to see what has happened and what has changed in Hamburg, because we are really in the process of transformation, and this is one of the reasons why we are here today. And I would like to say thank you to Klaus Müller, thank you to Paulius Kulikauskas, and of course to Gesa Sima, who asked me a few weeks ago whether we should have a reunion here in Brussels after we were here, I think it was the same room, in 2017, introducing you and some other guests to the CityScienceLab and to the program Finding Places. And looking back to 2017, 5 years ago, really many things have changed. And what I think, a lot of things have changed towards a very positive direction when it comes to the questions to be raised today, a harbor for innovation and technology in an accelerating sustainable urbanization. And I'm really impressed to see how the CityScienceLab has moved forward, has started to collaborate even more. You were talking about partnerships, and I think it is really amazing. And I don't want to talk too much because you will find out yourself, and Gesa Sima will give you an introduction into the progress that has made. But what I would like to talk about is how cities coming from a different tradition, such as Hamburg, coming from a port and tradesman tradition, a very conservative approach towards change, how they have started, at least started, to transform, and how different people and different networks have really triggered the change we are seeing at the moment. And this is something I would like to focus on within the next few minutes, because what we see in Hamburg is that we are economically wise, that we are very strong, that we have been very strong in the past, and then we are now in a situation where we have to think about how we take our strength into the future, how we keep the wealth, how we are attractive to people from all over the world, and how we are the harbor really for innovation and technology in a world that is rapidly changing and that is confronting us with so many challenges, starting off with climate change, going to the war situation we have, the pandemic we have gone through. And actually, this is one of the first meetings, we just heard it, after 2 years, like a reunion here after a pandemic phase of mostly having digital communication and not seeing each other in person. So we see that the world is very vulnerable and affected by so many different challenges. And I think we have to see how it goes, how we find a strategy for the cities, for the metropolis region, and in this case for Hamburg and the metropolis region, to become more resilient, to become even more creative and innovative. And of course, I have to say that, but I'm absolutely convinced that this is the right direction. I think the core to everything is to have a good framework for our universities, for research institutions, for all kinds of transfer activities. And this is exactly the way Hamburg has proceeded over the past years. And I think there are 3 or 4 essentials to it. First of all, it's the people. You can achieve anything with the right people. So how do you get a city to be a place where everybody wants to be? And I think science, again, is the answer. To have good universities, to have unique research institutions, to have unique research facilities, and to have the network where you feel you can contribute a great part. And this is part of our strategy to be the place where people from all over the world, in the best case, the smartest people from all over the world, can really find their home. And I had the privilege to follow the application process for our university to become an excellence university. That's like a kind of Wettbewerb in, pardon? Competition, right. That's a competition where the best scientists from all over the world compete for their best science ideas. And we had an international jury, and they were not only convinced that we have excellent scientists in physics, in climate research, and interesting in all the society faculties where the small subjects have their home. They also said Hamburg is an ideal place because they see that this is a place of freedom, that this is a place where the city interacts fantastically with the universities, with the research institutions, with the projects being launched, and actually provide the framework and provide the funds and resources to do so. And so actually it gives the ground for innovation and technology. So it's the people in the first place. It's the resources I just mentioned, it's the framework, it's the cooperation possibilities, and what I would like to focus on now, it's the places. And I want to talk to you about the Science City. It's a bit of a wordplay because for the rest of the morning you will be hearing a lot from the CityScienceLab. But what we are trying to do in Hamburg is create a science city. And this is part of Hamburg. Maybe some of you are familiar with Hamburg. This is the western part of Hamburg. It's called Hamburg-Altona, and there we have a district which is called Bahrenfeld. And in Bahrenfeld, we already have the DESI, which is a huge accelerator. This is a worldwide unique infrastructure, and people from all over the world come here. We already have 3,000 scientists coming and doing their experiments in the beamlines. And we do have a lot of other research institutions collaborating in an interdisciplinary approach. They're already in place. It has grown over the past 4-5 decades and has become better and better, and in the scientific community more and more important and more attractive, especially for scientists and researchers from abroad, from the international level. And what we started a few years ago was really to see the potential of science and decided to create an own little city around the DESI and around the campus we already have. You see here is a huge park, and down there we have something called a horse racing track at the moment. So usually there are running horses, or in the summer there are concerts with thousands of visitors. And we are in the process of transforming the entire area into a science city, a place, an international showcase, a place where you have science and research, where you have housing, people can live there, recreational activities in the heart of the city of Hamburg. And this really should be an international showcase to show how important is science, how important the people are, how important the infrastructures are in transforming a city from a traditional portsman and trade city into a city of innovation and technology. Because we not only have basic research here, which has been carried out there for a few decades, we also have things called innovation labs and factories where young entrepreneurs and, of course, old enterprises come to really interact. So we have an area created, an area of innovation there. And in my opinion, and this is why we are here today, not only to show you how fantastic the CityScienceLab is, but also actually to put Hamburg on the map, not only national map, but also European map, as a city where you have to be the hotspot, so-called hotspot for science, research and innovation. How it works if everybody works hand in hand together, if all politicians, irrespective of the color of your party, really think that this is the way you have to go about it in the future, to have a good framework, to really put a focus on science and research. University, let them strive and prosper really. And this is our example, the science city in Hamburg, where we transform an entire area into a science area, which is also open to people from all over the world, on the one hand, but also people who just think it's fascinating and they want to come and see. Here a little more details. Here's the DESI, just to give you a sense of orientation. And these are all the different buildings and infrastructures. This is a huge accelerator. We also have the European XFEL, the brightest and biggest and lightest X-ray worldwide so far. It is a 3.8 kilometers long under the earth. You know, we have the Elbphilharmonie above, and then we have the European XFEL underneath. We call it our Elphi underground. And that really attracts scientists and people from all over the place. And this really will be an innovation hub with sparkling lights into the entire region. You see what is already in place, and you see what is being laid out. This is where the horses run at the moment, and the concerts are taking place, and we want to transform the entire area into our science city. And this is how it can look afterwards. You see what it looks here right now. And here you see some of the old buildings, and then you have the area which will be entirely new within the next 10, 15 years. And I think this is really an example how cities who know that they have to go through a transition phase and period in order to keep the wealth, in order to be attractive for people from near and far, to become even more international, and to keep the jobs from today and to create new jobs for tomorrow. This is the way to go about it, to combine city planning with science, with research, and with all the ideas of digitization, urbanization, and technology change. And maybe this last picture gives you an idea which direction we are heading to. And yeah, these were my final remarks, and I'm open to questions, and I'm very eager to hear now about the progress and the new programs of the City Science Lab. Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation, and I hope you enjoy yourself this morning here.
So good morning, everyone. A warm welcome also from my side. Thank you very much. First of all, Klaus Müller, where are you now? Where are you sitting? Ah, there. Thank you for hosting us here. I'm very, very pleased and glad to be here. As you already said, we are friends of the Hanse office. We have been here some years ago, and I still have very good memories in my heart from the last time, and the sun is shining, and we are here in person. I think everyone appreciates this a lot. Thanks a lot for hosting us, and a very special thank you to Klaas de Boer. I have to say this already at the beginning, for organizing this whole event. You are so kind and nice and patient, because it's a complex thing. There are a lot of people from the UN and from the European Commission, and then us from the university. Thanks for organizing it. We are very happy to be here. Thank you also, Katharina Fegebank, to you for being here, for joining this event. I know that you are very busy at these times, war times, and also post-pandemic times. For a deputy mayor, this is special. And Katharina has been one of our big supporters already from the beginnings. She always stands by our side with supporting the City Science Lab, with seed funding, with giving warm welcome greetings for international conferences. And I'm super happy that you are here. And you also traveled with us to MIT Media Lab, because we are different partners here presenting today. There is UN Habitat from Nairobi, my colleague Katja Schäfer, who will come later and present the UNITAC project. There's Pontus Westerberg, also from Nairobi. You already spoke, Paulius. And then there are also people from our research lab. Hilke Berger is sitting there, and also Daniel is also, where's Daniel? Where are you sitting? Daniel is there. So when I say it's not me, it's a whole team here, and it's a cooperation between the university and UN Habitat. And there's another partner in this triangle, and this is MIT Media Lab in Boston. There's no one here today, but we have a strong collaboration, a long-term collaboration with MIT Media Lab. So a lot of tools that I'm going to show you now are also done or program coded with our colleagues from MIT Media Lab. So I want to do this input a bit interactive, because we are all also a little tired of talking heads too long. So I will give you some information, some frame information about the City Science Lab, how this works. And then Daniel will come on stage and will play a little game with you. I think you all have your mobiles with you. You can log into the wireless LAN. It's Der echte Norden, but you can also use mobile data. This will then happen when Daniel comes. And we also brought some devices with us. So there is another room that we will open later, I think. There are some touch screens and also VR glasses. that you can use. So all the things that I am explaining here can be used and tried out later in that room, so that it's much better to try it in real, let's say, on real screens than only seeing it here on the PowerPoint presentation. So how does this work here? That's like this. Okay, so you see that we speak about data for citizens and cities. It's about the digital city. What does it mean? New forms of collaboration. I think collaboration is one of the most important goals that we achieve with our technology. So we make people work together in a better way. We have a lot of data. We can make those data transparent. And at the end, people come together, can speak to each other. We can break down data silos. We can make them work in an interdisciplinary way. That's actually what we do every day. And you see here the two institutions. I said that before. This is on one hand, I'm presenting the CityScienceLab, but I'm also part of UNITAC. I do work also with my teams, my colleagues in Nairobi. I'm a bit the bridge between the two labs. In Hamburg, we are staying in one building. So the CityScienceLab has approximately 30 researchers, an interdisciplinary team. UNITAC has approximately like 8 to 10 at the moment, and we merge those teams, and everything that I'm going to explain here now is also used by the United Nations, and also the other way around. The United Nations has a lot of urban technology, and we are also using their technology. So we merge our teams, we merge people, we merge technology, and we try to organize knowledge transfer between the United Nations and the HafenCity University. Paulus mentioned that it's about partnerships, and we organize those kind of partnerships every day, and it makes a lot of sense for me, and I'm super happy that we have this collaboration also with the UN, because city planning, urban development is again much more interesting when you go to the global south, because you have different challenges, huge cities. I mean, when we speak about urban development here in Europe, everything works quite well. Everything is well organized. We have public transportation. And when you go to bigger cities like, I don't know, Lagos, a lot of cities in the African country, but also Latin America, the Arab regions, we have other issues. You can imagine this, and this is interesting for us as being city researchers. So we don't speak so much about smart cities. We speak more about digital cities, because cities are not dumb, who are not smart cities. So this is why we like the word digital more than smart. We are seed funded by the city of Hamburg, by the mayor's office, but also by Katharina's ministry. And we are part of the digital strategy of the city of Hamburg. Most European cities have digital strategies now, but when we started 6 years ago, it was not like that. So we are also part of that. And that's interesting in Hamburg, that a university is part of a digital strategy. And that's another proof for what Katharina said here, that we try to take research serious, that we are a serious and very strong partner also for politics and the authorities. Why a city lab? That's interesting. In our case, there are a lot of city labs emerging at the moment in a lot of European countries, but we are located at a university, because a university is quite neutral. So we are not a political party, we are not a company, we don't want to sell our products. We are like neutral. We are setting up the tools, but the political decisions that come out of the tools are made by the politicians and not by us as researchers. And that's quite a good position in the city of Hamburg, and it works very well. We are free space for experimentation. We very often invite people from the authorities to our lab to work there, so that they can get out of their offices, they can try to think out of the box and make other things happen. And that makes a lot of sense. We have a lot of test groups in our lab. We work with employees from the authorities, so it's a very agile workflow. That's also important. And the independency, I already mentioned that. This is our university, just a few images. We are not part of the Science City, the region that Katharina showed here. We are in the HafenCity, huge harbor transformation project in Hamburg. You might have been there. And it's a very nice building attached to the River Elbe. So we have a big presentation room also. We invite or host regularly delegations from all over the world, also from the European Commission. They come from time to time to see what digital city means, and we are kind of example then for a European city, and they see how we organize it. So this is actually the square we are working in between. We have a lot of partners from civil society, science, of course, economy, and also politics. And the goal, like I said it already at the beginning, to enable collaboration and joint decision-making for sustainable transformation. And we call us a multi-stakeholder lab. That's important. We collaborate with a lot of different people, from young kids, schools. We have never collaborated with the kindergarten, actually, but young kids, and then until political parties and very different disciplines, people with very different backgrounds come to our lab. And I think it's super important that we as researchers also have this goal or this role of mediating in between those different disciplines or fields in society. Our research on action fields, you can see them here. I don't go too much into details. We do a lot about collaboration, multi-stakeholder collaboration. On one hand, citizen engagement. We really organize regularly citizen engagement processes for all different fields like residential housing, new forms of mobility, protecting the environment. I mean, there are a lot of different issues going on. And we set up a tool, the digital participation tool. Daniel will show us this later. And this is used by the city of Hamburg. So we don't only prototype in our lab, we really set up tools that go into application. That's very important for me always to underline. We are academics and researchers, but we do a little more. We are really offering the tools for the city, and within the stakeholder networks, they all go into application. I'm quite proud of that. And we also organize stakeholder engagement. Now we have some tools that are closed for the public because we deal with a lot of very fragile data. We have high data protection in Germany. So some of the tools are closed and they are only for experts like social or city planners in certain fields. When we speak about also space and finances, for example, or social data, then the tools are closed. Modeling is one of our strong research focus, how to model the city. I mean, you can imagine the city is a very complex system and it's very difficult to find models that fit to what we think about a city should be. And then narratives and interfaces. I think we have to tell the stories. And I always say that all the tools that we use should to be understood very, very quickly. People have to come to our lab and within 5 minutes, they have to understand how a tool works and they have to get immediately into interactive use of those tools. So how is the data organized? How is it visualized? And how does the user story works? It's very important for us. We have a lot of different funding partners. You can imagine this. We also work with companies. We're having a project with Google at the moment about air view. So we are collecting air quality data. And important for us is that those data go into the urban data platform of Hamburg because we stick a lot to the open data policies. We have a good open data situation. In Hamburg, we have a transparency law. So also when a company comes, then of course we try to negotiate the contracts in that way that those data then also can be used by the city of Hamburg. I think this is very important and also a super important issue when we speak about digital cities, because we have to work with companies. How do you deal the contracts? How can we get the companies involved into city planning that at the end is common goal orientated and not only a commercial track for the companies? I know that this is a big issue, but we try our best. We have European Union projects, of course. We are in the lead of Mikado, which is a project about refugees, using urban technologies for refugees when they arrive in the city of Hamburg. We have Cities for People and Move 21, which is about new forms of mobility, last mile mobility. So we are quite experienced also in organizing European Union projects. And you all know that they are big with a lot of partners. There's a lot of communication. And with the UNITAC cooperation now, it would be interesting for us to see if there are calls with strong European consortiums, but also with partners from other continents like Africa, Latin America, and also wherever. This is what we haven't done in the CityScienceLab, but this is where we have now the UN on board because they have a lot of experience with those projects where they connect the European Union to other continents. This is then our next step. Just one brief remark. Why do we do all this? I said it's about collaboration, but I always see my work very much in a political way. It's also about maintaining or taking care of the democratization of our democracy, because there is so much. There are so many arguments and so many conflicts in city planning. I mean, the cities are growing. We don't have so much space for it. And then there is a lot of populism. There are a lot of popular meanings and ideas about how a city should be. And there's a lot of complaining about mayors, deputy mayors. No? There are a lot of citizens who come, they don't understand, and we should do it like this. And our role is to explain how complex a city it is, and that it's not so easy to, for example, host 40,000 refugees in a city within 3 or 2 weeks. And this is very important for me, that democracy maintaining is an important goal. And then, of course, cities are getting bigger, but they have been big data producers meanwhile. This is a picture of Shanghai, and the collection of data is not so new, but we have more data than ever in cities, and we have so many different linkage opportunities because between all those very heterogeneous data. And it's a huge challenge for all of us to set up tools to organize and to curate the data and to mediate the data to the audience, to the citizens, but also to the government. And of course, when we then work in the global south and come to other cities, we know that a lot of people live in informal settlements, and we have completely different situations. We have, on one hand, cities in the world with a lot of data. Then we go there and ask ourselves, how can we make value out of this data? How can we organize and curate those data? But then we also have a significant lack of data. Very often we come to cities and we have huge social problems, but we don't have data. And this is why we also set up tools for data collection. We just set up a data collection, for example, for care mobility within the pandemic, because a lot of people did care work. And how did they do it? What kind of routes do they take through the city? This is data that does not exist nearly never. There's no mapping about care mobility. And so we try to set up also tools for collecting data. And those tools we can also use then in the Global South for different topics. And then, of course, we very often have the situation of unconnected data. There's a lot of data also in the Global South, in the cities, but there's no connection. There's no urban data management system. Data is very heterogeneous, and so on and so on. So what can we do? What we do is actually that we try to set up this new data-based collaborative tools and practices. And finding places was mentioned already several times from Klaus Müller and also Katharina Fegebank. I don't go into details, but we did this project in the winter 2014-15 when so many refugees arrived to the city of Hamburg because of the Syria war. There were like 40,000 people within 4 months, and we had to put all those people into tents because there is no empty space in Hamburg, and it was really a challenge for the government, for all of us, to distribute those people. And then the mayor of Hamburg, who was Olaf Scholz during that time, he was the mayor of Hamburg, he called me and said, look, can we set up a tool to help distribute those people? Where can we put those people? They have to stay clean, safe, dry, warm, and we need to build temporary housing facilities, very small and easy temporary housing facilities. But where can we put them? We don't have empty space. We have public space, but no empty space. And we set up a tool that was our first Cityscope in collaboration with MIT Media Lab about the public space in Hamburg. How is it organized? Where do we have space? And this was a citizen engagement process for 4 months. We invited all the citizens from Hamburg to our lab and set up an interactive tool to speak about or to talk about the public space and where to put those temporary housing facilities. And that was quite successful, and that was one step also in a kind of appeasement politics because the emotions were very high during that situations. We have a right-wing party that got to the parliament, AfD, during that time, and there were a lot of people, they wanted to close the borders of Hamburg and they don't wanted to let any refugee in anymore. So the situation was quite highly emotional. And that was good to invite all those people and say, look, if you give us an alternative, if you don't want the people in that district, you get the Lego brick in your hand and try to find out another option for hosting all those people, and that was good. Here you can see Olaf Scholz trying the tool before the big press conference and opening of this project was, and also Katharina was there. I think you remember that well, these times. So citizen engagement in the past, of course, looked like that. It's very analog, and it is still in a lot of cities in the world, also European cities, we have a lot of analog citizen engagement, like people work with paper, pens, little flags, maps. This is what it was, and it's still like this, but it looks like this in a lot of cities. Nowadays, we organize this in a digital way. We have touch screens. People can put in their information from their mobile phones and so on and so on. Daniel will explain this later. This is actually what we want to do with you now in 5 minutes, a bit citizen engagement so that you can see how this works. And this is then, those kind of maps come out of the comments that a lot of citizens contribute to our work. And we also work with machine learning and artificial intelligence now in this field, because we have a lot of comments from citizens, thousands of comments, much more than we had before. And we have to organize all those comments. And you can do this with artificial intelligence and clustering the comments. It's natural language processing at the end. So this is also a big research field that we are in now. Participation, this is another project, and this is Hilke's project. She is there, sitting in the last row. And Hilke did a project about using virtual reality for city planning. You can also all imagine the game industry is getting stronger and stronger. A lot of young people get involved when they can game. They like to game. They like to use controllers. They like to use the VR glasses. And city planning is very often about perceiving a room or perceiving public space. It's not all about mapping, and it's not all about statistic, and it's not all about numbers. It's very often about sensing an area or sensing a city or a facade, for example. What kind of material do we want to use for a facade? And this research project is very interesting because it's about collaborating in the virtual room. There are not many tools. I mean, when we use the glasses, we are usually alone in the virtual room, and we are very isolated, and a lot of people don't like that. And we try to set up a tool that combines collaboration so that I can communicate with you in the virtual room with these glasses. And I show you a very brief video. I hope this works now.
Tasks such, in our case, the design of a park, can be discussed, implemented, changed, and experienced together. The workshop starts at a touch table where people can make themselves familiar with the site and the task. Different kind of background information and visualization can be included. Here you start as a group to discuss your ideas like planting trees or creating pathways. In the second part of the workshop, a part of the group switch into virtual reality, the exact same scenery you already experienced on the touch table. In a multi-user mode, you can make changes, discuss alterations, and change immediately what you have in mind. The touch table is still synchronized and shows all the alterations in real time. The next step would be that you can visit the park on your own or with a group of friends and check out the design you made on the augmented reality app on your mobile phone on site. In this AR on-site mode, you have the chance to make alterations that will be included in the planning process as well. After finalizing the prototyping phase for the touch table and the virtual reality application, we start with multi-user stakeholder workshops.
Yeah, thank you, Hilke. You're not on stage here, but she explained it quite well and in a very short form. This is the project, and Hilke brought the glasses, like I said before, and you can try it afterwards. You can put them on and try to co-create this park. Another project is this cockpit social or urban infrastructure that it calls COSI, and the mastermind of COSI sits there. It's Daniel Schulz, who will come on stage then now. And COSI is interesting and highly requested from a lot of cities in Germany, but also in Europe and also internationally, because COSI connects spatial data with social data or infrastructure data of a city. You can organize like scenario planning. You have a new kindergarten at a space in a city, and then you can ask what happened if. Do we need more public transportation? Do people need more access to green space? This scenario planning is very important in city planning. A lot of people want that, and they want a kind of data platform where you can curate and bring together all those different data. And the big thing with the COSI is that a city planner does not have to collect the data from different sources, like it is very often in the government, but it's a web-based platform. You have it on your laptop, and you can start to it's a kind of centralization of data. So, and it's much easier now for planners to plan different spaces in cities. Daniel will explain it also here in a video now, even if he is here and come on stage, but this is also a short video where he explains COSI.
Of COSI, the cockpit for social infrastructure, is to provide a web-based geoinformation system that draws in real time from the urban data platform and gives access to information for urban planning. It is not a program that in the end prints out the optimal solution for urban planning through algorithmic processing. Rather, it provides insights and opportunities to work with the data at different stages of a project's development, and in particular, to test different solutions through collaborative work. To achieve this flexibility in the application, the tool has three main functionalities: visualization, analysis, and simulation.
Prior to COSI, planners in Hamburg had to approach each district administration individually to request the data they needed for their plans. At the same time, administrations have become very cautious about growing privacy concerns and legal issues. COSI aims to network the data needed and prepare for better access and quick analysis, especially for social planning. Thus, as a city planner, you can easily access the latest city data through COSI. Responsibility for these data sets is clearly defined. Errors can be reported to the appropriate parties. Thus, the retrieved data becomes a trusted source and very valuable to generate knowledge for planning purposes.
Yeah, so that's COSI, and you can imagine that we put Hamburg maps now, or we work with Hamburg data, because this is a project made for Hamburg, but you can put all data from different cities in it. We can also do it in Nairobi, we can do it in Mexico, and at the moment we are transferring this tool to Guadalajara in the informal settlements because they have water access issues. They want to organize water access in a better way, and we put all the data from Guadalajara in that and use it there in the informal settlement. So, and now UNITAC comes in. First of all, Daniel will do the interactive part, but one sentence for UNITAC. When we speak about other cities or other continents or bigger cities, then at the end they have very, very similar issues like we have here in Europe. I think that the differences are not so big, except one difference, that is that we have very good data situations, but the need of what they want is very similar. They all need good open data infrastructure, so setting up urban data hubs, setting up urban data management system is very crucial for our work. Mapping basic data is very important. Some things are not mapped, also here in Europe, like I said, for example, care mobility, but you have other issues in other countries. Then setting up dialogue tools between the government and the citizens. This is the DPAS tool. Every democratic government wants to talk to the citizens, and also the other way around. Citizens want to speak to the government. Then it's about all the digital city planning tools. Like I said, scenario planning is super important all over. And monitoring and predicting instruments is also something that is very important. How can we, for example, measure the impact of the SDGs? Very, very locally, we are also working on that in UNITAC. So this is actually my last picture. I took this at Highline in New York. It's a graffiti. I like that a lot. I'm not interested in competing with anyone. I hope we will all make it. That's actually our goal. We try to foster collaboration, and collaboration creates trust. At the end, this is from my very personal experience, the most important thing when you work with data. You have to create trust, because a lot of people are very skeptical also about data use. There is a lot of discussion about surveillance and all those things. So we show what we can do, but we also show the limits of our tools. And there is this very famous quote from a scientist that I like so much. He said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And that's what we are trying to do. We're trying to set up useful tools to help people to work better, to work well in a better way. So now I'm handing over to you, Daniel, for the interactive part. Thank you for listening, and see you.
Hi everyone. Oops. Can you still? What is happening? This right. Here. It was under the computer. That was it. Can I now? Yes. As Gita so vividly illustrated, all these tool chains are supposed to connect the citizens to the government and the other way around to create a bi-directional communication. And obviously we don't have time now to go into every detail of how those different interfaces to those data spaces work. But what we want to try out with you is to test how we can use, or show you how we can use the tool like DPAS, the digital participation tool, to interact with the data from the citizen's perspective, but also to give your own input and provide data results. So if you scan this QR code or type in this URL, you will end up at a website that looks more like this on your mobile device. And for demonstration purposes, we stick to the city of Hamburg now. Is everyone set up so far? Yeah. Great. Great. I will explain in a second. So I will quickly switch over to what you will see. Oh shit! I have to move this. So what you see is a map of Hamburg with a satellite map and some exemplary data layers. This is very small. Can I somehow move out? Yeah. We have the satellite map. We have icons that tell you where the playgrounds are. We have icons that tell you where the nightclubs are. And we would ask you. I see. Well, I would just. Yeah. Also, especially when we're all over using the same Wi-Fi hotspot, that might also create a bottleneck. But I will explain. You can also participate. It's as said, we are using it in a decentral fashion, so it's not supposed to be real time once and now. It's like, as Giza said, you can use it in workshop setups where people stand around the touch table, but you can also go visit the city and visit the website whenever you feel like it, you want to contribute. So what we would like to ask you is, as those examples show, to zoom around the map. There's more information in this button, Themen, topics, where you can find additional data layers, and all those data layers like gastronomy, leisure, schools, these data sets are all, as Gesa explained, drawn directly from the central data warehouse of the city of Hamburg, and can here be used for the people to explore the city and get a grasp of how the city is constituted. So we would like you to ask you to scroll around and find a place that you find interesting, and then hit this big red button and just leave a comment whether it would be a place that you could imagine that it would be nice to live, or that you think it would be a good place to start a shop at. So you see, those are the examples we already put in, where users can input their own data and see also in real time what other people provided as input for the city. In this overview, you get a listing of all the contributions that other people anonymously made. Those names here are only exemplary. You can, of course, stay anonymous if you like. And as it comes with social media-esque functionality, we can have the citizens themselves discuss and vote on contributions that other people made to create an interaction between citizens and the government. And the map, I hope it loads now. I'm not sure why it doesn't load right here. Maybe this is also bandwidth. I think it's the bandwidth. The good thing, and this is also what Gesa said when it comes to places like Guadalajara, we can not only use it to query opinions, so that people can say, this is a shit junction, we have problems there with traffic, but we can also use it to actually harvest community knowledge, because you can not only input single locations, but you can also mark pathways, mark areas. So for in Guadalajara, for example, we could imagine to use it to have the citizens themselves map the locations of water tanks or water pipes that are used for the community for their infrastructure. In the next step, and this is my last piece of information, we can use the tool COSI that Gesa talked about to display this information that of all those citizen inputs and visualize them comprehensively for the planners to work with. So this data is categorized. It is on what topic are we working. It includes the text that the people put in, and it also includes the strength of the reactions of other people onto a commentary. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? And also all the social media threads that follow. And then, as Gesa said, we can use tools like machine learning and NLP to rank and rate those comments to identify areas of importance. We can find out, okay, where this is really. I'm sorry. I'll zoom out this. Yeah. So as we see in this example, you have citizen contributions that are highly controversial or that draw a lot of negative attention. We have some that are highly regarded positively, and through a lot of different means, like for example also visualizing heat maps, we can help planners to identify points in the city where you have high importance, where do we really need to look closer. This is not meant as the conclusive evaluation of a process. This is more like the entry point for planners to get in contact with the citizens' needs and find out where do we have to go deeper, where do we have to focus on when we host in-person events, for example. I will not show you all the functionalities, but just for a brief impression. For example, we could now filter the data and look for data that is only related to mobility. And then we again see, okay, where's data of high importance, where are conflict areas, where citizens' desires clash, and then we can relate those to different other parameters. For example, in this example that I already prepared, where we see the data, we can also filter them and sort them by strength of reaction. We could now, for example, see whether this correlates in any way to the proximity of public transport stops. So now again in this scenario we could see which of the contributions that deals with mobility and with strong reactions is how far from the next public transport stop. So as you see, this is a highly complex tool. We can also relate the number of contributions, for example, to certain demographic groups. We can use the contributions to see to build matrices of other location factors like noise pollution, like heat, air quality. But generally, this allows our planners to really get in contact with the citizens and then use the DPAS platform and the in-person events to feedback their conclusions to the citizenry. And now, with these words, I will hand over to Katja. 2 more words on UNITAC.
Can you maybe
yeah, of course.
Thanks a lot. I think this is a real case example of being in a beautiful building with actually also facing a bit of a digital divide, because we could not attend actually the exercise. But it's a very interesting real case scenario also how we can use technology, in fact, to help planners to plan cities better.
I will leave you now, but we have set up the demo cases in the other room, and then we can stand there and have in-depth discussions, and you can still contribute.
Yes. Nevertheless, thank you very much for being in the Hansa office and also for allowing us as UN Habitat to throw the anchor or moor our boats in the HafenCity of Hamburg. I would like to actually use the opportunity as, let's say, the coordinator of UN Habitat's People-Centered Smart City program, as well as the UNITAC, the United Nations Innovator Technology Accelerator for Cities, to really shed light how we frame it in a bigger picture. We had wonderful examples from Hamburg, but we as UN Habitat, of course, are very concerned about urban development in a global context. And in fact, I think I just recently learned about the 3 C challenges we are facing, which is in fact, let's say, the corona crisis. We have the climate crisis as well, and the conflict man-made and naturally made, let's say. And within that, in fact, the opportunities that digitalization allow us to better understand the challenges that cities are facing in order to respond is really the frame, I think, that we have embraced over the, let's say, the last 2 years. And UNITAC is part of this journey, but we have also this overarching framework, which I would like to share with you. And I guess I need to learn also how to hold this.
Just push the button.
I might make someone dance in the room if I push the button. The limits of technology show us also that it's very important.
Well, the wrong device.
It is a pleasure. In 2016, in fact, for us at UN Habitat, it was really a milestone to really discuss the new urban agenda that sets the dynamics, the trends for the next 20 years. And in fact, the whole digital transformation discussion for us is deeply rooted there. And I would also like to share basically the approach of smart cities that has evolved over time, but a smart city approach that moves from frontier technologies, putting people at the center, looking at governance of cities is very much framing for us. I think communication and access. Okay, thank you. Thank you for assisting analogically. Communication is very key in order to share, in fact, the benefits that digital transformation has. And thanks also for highlighting, Gesa and your team, the participatory element of people being part of the journey and being part of a, let's say, a good urban governance approach. And that was the wrong way. So, for us, our colleagues have really looked deep into the evolution of the smart city discourse, and we came up with kind of 4 different waves that the world was flooded with. And as we all experience, technology is developing very rapidly. At the beginning, it was really like the marketer's smart city that, you know, different services were provided to assist, and then it focused more onto services, how can, in fact, access to technology, access to apps, help people to have better digital services. The city as a sharing platform is the next one, but for us we really have seen that there's also conflicts of interest somehow, and the people-centric element, why are we using technology, actually is quite key to better understand that it's for better quality of life in cities and for making everyone actually enjoying the benefits of cities here. In 2015, just before the new urban agenda was coined, quite an interesting report came out, which we actually recommend also all of you to look into. It's really how to rethink this whole smart city discussion from the ground up. It looks really not at, or looks into the challenges that we shouldn't start from technology, but really look at the urban challenges that technology tries to assist to better understand. We have mentioned several times here the issue of data, and I think technology can help us to understand, but then the question, of course, comes who owns the data, who has access to data, and then I think the lack of awareness how cities can be managed, how they can be improved is very often a challenge for different sets of stakeholders, and the participation both in an analog or digital way is not always given, which is a precondition, as I said, for good governance. And then, I mean, in a few years ago, a few decades ago, we have seen this kind of new smart city approach, which is very much at the greenfield side. And the question is really, where is the human element here? It's very infrastructure loaded. There are elements, of course, also looking at the environmental dimension, but it's really something that needs to be discussed and challenged. And UN Habitat, in fact, for us, as part of our new strategic plan that is spanning from 2020 to 2025, we have, at the time, really defined frontier technologies as a challenge for urban development, or not a challenge, also an opportunity. And that, again, looking at the people-centric element, at children, at youth, at women, disabled, migrants even, how they can be part of this journey. And in fact, for us as the United Nations, it's very important to look at the underserved populations. Gesa, you mentioned also the informality discussion. These are people who are not seen, and we must actually tell their story in order to improve their quality of life sustainably, let's say. So it was in February 2020 when we launched this so-called flagship program that places people at the center. This is at the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi. Right the last conference before Corona hit the world, let's say. And for us, in fact, since then we have had also an accelerated journey in understanding the use of technology, and we are all actually beneficiaries from that journey. We know all how to use MS Teams now to communicate, but I think it's also for cities to better understand how to address the urban challenges raised by people is quite coming to the fore. So our program, in fact, has been conceptualized as an initial frame to basically look at urban digital transformation to work for the benefit of all, to drive sustainability, inclusive prosperity with a strong human rights dimension for cities and human settlements. So when we talk about people-centered smart cities, it's not the cities itself, it's also the rural, urban connectivity and intermediary-sized cities, so it's human settlements. So there are three elements that we look into. One is, of course, digital policy transformation. I think countries, cities have not been to the full scale aware that urban planning policies need to be connected also to the digital journey that we want to embrace. We have to embrace, in fact. We also would like to look at financing urban innovation is a key element for us as well in order to actually implement or localize the Sustainable Development Goals. The new urban agenda is our vehicle for that. And key also is the digital empowerment of people, of cities, of our decision makers, together with the wider network of colleagues. So let's say for us in the last 2 years, we started, in fact, the journey of developing some sort of think pieces for local leaders, for city leaders, to understand, in fact, how to center people in smart cities. What are the principles here? we all understand what it means to have the digital divide, who is left behind, which places are left behind, and then really to translate this into guidance for city leaders to address the digital divide. And I think that helps also all of us as development partners to come together and basically assist cities in this, or urbanization processes in this journey. We are still working on a few of them, and they will evolve over time as we explore the key challenges that need an answer. So there is a community pillar, also an infrastructure, let's say connectivity pillar, and a security pillar. And we will roll this out in more detail, what that means. And what for us, in fact, has been extremely crucial to promote is that we need proactive and strategic leadership by national and local governments to embrace the digital transformation journey. We have seen over time, and here are just some examples of cities that have come up with, let's say, smart city strategies. Each of them has found a different entry point. Let's say Barcelona here, Vienna, Amman, but we have also examples from the global south, which we maybe might put for the future pointers. But I think here also the example of taking local strategic elements for digital transformation to the national level is quite key. So Smart Dubai is one of the, let's say, regional territorial approaches that we can look at. Or here, a case of Saudi Arabia that is embracing this journey as well. For us, in fact, also, it is important to understand and guide, let's say, the key partners in this journey on different elements that relate to governance and new technologies that have not been embraced in legislation or policy elements. For instance, if one looks here at urban mobility, I think an example that all of us have observed are the scooters and bicycle systems in the cities that block traffic or block access to spaces which other people might need, for instance, people in wheelchairs or mothers with their strollers. So mobility is one element I think that city planners have to fully embrace. I mean, do we have a policy for drones, for instance? I mean, how do we access or use those in cities? It is not really there. There is, of course, public participation, but as we have seen, if we don't have access to the communication or don't even have the skills or the device, we cannot actually participate through a means of digital participation. An example here, also from the EU, and then, I think we can go deeper into this if there is interest. We, as I said, we are very keen in exploring the digital inclusion element from a digital, let's say, human rights perspective and the ethics of the use of technology. A group of cities has come together, the Cities Coalition for Digital Rights. We are also supporting them, is really declaring certain principles that need to be followed at city leader scale to really embrace digital transformation. There is discussions on different aspects, for instance, I mean, blockchain, or here on AI, ethic principles and guidelines or use for cities, and here for us from our side also understanding internet connectivity and digital literacy for people in cities and communities. I think also another element, which is, I mean, I don't go into details here, but where do we store the data that is collected? Do we carry hard disks around, or we go for the cloud space? So these are also, I think, elements that we are trying to understand with cities together. And here, just also a vivid image of what capacities mean. I think city leaders owning 2 smartphones doesn't mean they are literate in embracing the digital journey, but also communities, elderly people, we don't have images here, but women, children, how do they participate in this journey as active citizens? And then, as I said, the climate is yet another transformational journey that we really have to embrace. And just recently, this report came out, the interlinkage between technology use and the global energy sector. And the graph is quite interesting because over the next few years, in fact, behavior changes matter, but technologies that have not been developed yet will actually frame the energy consumption. And I think this is something that we also have to understand. We cannot promote for the sake of promoting technology use, but also appropriate utilization. And then I think this image is just for me a transition to really invite you to further discussions with us on the future of cities. So not only technology driven, but let's look also at appropriate neighborhoods. Let's look at the environment and the social components. And yeah, as I was seeing yesterday at arrival in Brussels, even here at the airport, we are invited to the World Urban Forum 11, which will take place in Katowice in a few weeks' time. In fact, please feel free to join us online, but also in person. Where we will, in fact, then I go a bit deeper into the details here. For UNITAC Hamburg, as I said, we are really, proud to be anchored in Hamburg City with this, let's say, innovation and technology accelerator, which is key and instrumental for addressing sustainable urbanization in the future. And Geza, as you said, the partnership between UN Habitat, let's say, as the urban UN agency, the Office for Information Communication Technology in New York as the tech company, and the HafenCity University with the CityScienceLab as the anchor for innovation and doing things differently is really a great partnership that we are trying to bring together. As I said, HafenCity University, I'm really inspired to come by boat every morning to work and find alternative means of transportation. The partnership, Paulus, you were highlighting this quite importantly. We have also our urban targets, but I think the innovation and infrastructure dimension of the Sustainable Development Goals and reducing inequalities are really our frames for this work. UNITAC embraces, with a strong focus, as I said, on the unseen, on the communities that we usually don't look into, for open, transparent, participatory digital governance approaches to reducing this digital divide that I mentioned, to map, analyze, and visualize for decision makers on how we can basically address those urban challenges, develop tools. Geza and the team shared really interesting tools. How can they be transferred, let's say, or applied from a Hamburg testbed into the world? It's quite interesting. And then, of course, having that people-centered element. We have a project advisory committee, just I don't go into details, but we have representatives from the city of Hamburg here, but also really from the private sector and, for instance, also from a regional entity on Smart Africa to advise us on the direction that UNITAC takes. It's quite interesting. I always say we don't really have a programmatic document yet, but we are shaping it as the demand arises. So we are responding to requests from partners. We have quite a diverse team, which is growing by the day. And it doesn't consist only of data scientists or urbanists and artists, but we have also an economic angle, communications experts, and as I said, based on demand, we also expand the team on other technical areas. So 3 focus areas we offer on the strategy side, on the tool side, and on the capacity development side. And I'm sure the presentation will be made available to everyone. On the strategy side, we look at really transformation readiness for cities based on an assessment. Strategic advice to local governments on digital transformation based on request. And then really, as I said, smart city strategies. We are trying to set up principles so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again, but really helping the cities to be guided. And here it's not only for the big cities, but also intermediary-sized cities. On the tools, I think we got a bit of an idea what is possible, but there's many tools that are already available. There might be some that don't exist yet that will be developed. And so I think the journey is very exciting in really supporting local governments in this. Capacity development, I think an element here is peer-to-peer learning. I think when cities talk to cities, they are really open, let's say, on the challenges and opportunities and willing to learn. Trainings is another thing. On-the-job training is really something that we try to embrace. The technical advisory services based on demand, and the Urban Academy, which is currently in the making, where we are preparing with the HafenCity University basically a capacity skill sets for innovators in the future. Let's say the map is also going to be populated in the weeks to come. We have at the moment, of course, Hamburg as a test bed, and we have started projects in the city of Etequini in South Africa, in Alagoas, Brazil, and in the city of Amman in Jordan. I just want to share some examples of the work we are doing. In South Africa, for instance, here we are looking at artificial intelligence to map informal areas. If you see, like, for instance, here, the algorithms are setting basically the base for the build-up space. And I think, Geza, your example of going local at the end and validating the information with the communities to own this data as well is quite key. So this is in the making, so not yet completed. A second tool is basically looking at urban resilience. We have an approach developed with our colleagues from Barcelona, and this is being transferred into a digital tool that cities basically can use to faster and at scale understand the challenges for resilience of their cities. And this has been piloted in Amman with a first entry point on floods in the city and how basically one can maneuver around that. In the state of or city of Alagoas, we have also used mechanisms basically to use information on informal settlements to translate them into visual, let's say, tools for city makers to decide on policy steps. For instance, here is the issue of lighting of a city related to bus stops in informal areas. So I think this, and also the georeferencing, which is often not the case, has been explored. And here is the Urban Academy that I mentioned, which is also in preparation, where we support, let's say, on the intellectual and innovation side, technology, territorial approaches, and societies. We have had already quite a lot of requests, actually, for future programs. For instance, in the Arab region, the whole definition of urban data is being proposed and coming up with a data platform, looking at complex risk analysis for cities in Kenya, Sudan, and Syria has been requested, in fact, also by the Foreign Ministry. We have a strong focus, actually, for UNITAC on Africa and the digital transformation journey that, with a very rapidly urbanizing society, is going along, and really capacity building for the local governments. A recent request came really from our colleagues from the BMZ to look into just transitions in difficult places. So let's say looking at solutions, climate-proof solutions for informal areas, but also for cities facing a rapid influx of displaced people, and looking at urban recovery, understanding and mapping of cities affected by crisis. And in fact, thank you, Hamburg, for allowing us to have UNITAC, but Botswana has requested to also set up one, so we are going global, hopefully. I think we have also the opportunity to present UNITAC in different other forums. As I said, World Urban Forum is one of them where we will also be quite active, but we have been invited also in Berlin with the parliamentarians to enjoy a nice breakfast over the digital transformation journey discussion. Do connect with us if you have ideas, if you have suggestions. We are open to explore, and thanks for this opportunity. And my alarm went on, and I can stop here. You may all breathe for half a second, and I hand over to Pontus.
Hi everyone, my name is Pontus Westerberg, and I'm a program manager with UN Habitat, and I co-lead our people-centered smart cities program with Katja, who presented before. In this final session, we would like to have a bit of a dialogue between the UN and colleagues from the European Commission here. I will lead a bit of an interactive discussion about people-centered smart cities, what is needed to put it into practice, and how the UN and the EU can collaborate more closely on this topic. So we got 5 colleagues here. To my left first, we have Cristina Martinez, who is the Deputy Head of the Unit for Smart Technologies for Communities. We have Paolo Ciccarelli, who is the Head of the Unit for Mobility and Urban Development. We have Katja Schäfer, who is the Program Manager of UNITAC and co-lead of People-Centered Smart Cities at UN Habitat. We have Wiebke Pankauke, who is Deputy Head of Future Cities. Future Urban Mobility Systems at the European Commission, and Paulius Kalukaukus, who is the head of the UN Habitat office here in Brussels. So, people-centered smart cities. I am, like Gesa, also not a super fan of the word smart cities. It raises all sorts of questions using a word like smart to describe cities. But as Katja had outlined in her presentation, it is there in the new urban agenda. In paragraph 66, member states commit to adopting a smart city approach. They don't really define exactly what it means, but throughout the new urban agenda, and of course in the Sustainable Development Goals, it's very clear that technology is there to further sustainable and inclusive development. So that's why we've called it at UN Habitat, our work on smart cities, people-centered smart cities. And it's really about 3 things. It's about the focus on human rights, which is of course a cornerstone of the work of the United Nations. It's about digital inclusion. We cannot have a proper smart city if not everyone is able to access the benefits of digitalization. And of course it's about making digital technologies useful to meet our other urban goals, which might be about affordable housing, about reduced urban carbon emissions, or improved mobility and these kind of things. But I wanted to ask the colleagues here what they think is kind of meant and how we put in place a people-centered smart city. Maybe I start with you, Cristina.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here. I think we're representing 3 different DGs in the Commission. Indeed, well, actually urban policy is not really a prerogative of the European Union, but we do have a number of projects and the programs contributing to the development of people-centered, sustainable and smart cities. I'm representing DG Connect. In DG Connect, we are very much oriented to the smart in the title. But I tend to say that if it's not sustainable, it's not smart. So my idea of what the role of technology in this area is very simple, as you described it very well, actually. We're here to help achieve the other goals at the local level. And so that requires an understanding of what are these complex issues that we need to deal with, which are very specific to every city, and to support them with technologies that have proven their efficiency. So we need reliable indicators to measure the impact, to make sure that the impact is actually the right we hope for, and we can measure also the potential negative rebound effects. So that is very important as well. And for this, we have a number of tools, policy instruments to deliver. We have, of course, the Digital Decade, which is the framework in which we operate. It has released a number of legislations in Europe that have to do with fair AI, artificial intelligence, digital tools, data. Free flow of data is very important to support an innovative Europe, and many other policy instruments that will help Europe to become what we call digitally fit for the future. And then there are a number of principles which we think are very important at the urban level that have been transposed into a declaration called the Living-in-EU Declaration that is signed by mayors. It is for cities, by cities, and the purpose is to allow them to become autonomous in their choice of technology, to have control over their data, to be able to purchase technology that doesn't put them in a locking situation, and to make sure that citizens are at the center of the solutions that are developed and implemented by cities. So this is more or less the context, and then we have finally, of course, you need a little bit of money to support all that, or at least to incentivize all this. This is the digital program. The digital program has been launched last year. We are now launching the second call very soon, and what we're trying to achieve there is to support the development of a number of crucial infrastructure, critical infrastructure actually, to support what we call our technological sovereignty in Europe. So that goes from high-performance computing infrastructure to the deployment of networking, of data and cloud services for Europe. In the area of smart cities, we are also supporting with a number of solutions. First, we want to equip all cities with what we call a European data space on smart cities. Second, we want to create new tools to, let's say, exploit all that data that will be made available in an open and interconnected way. One example is what we call local digital twins. And then finally, we want to support and manage the multi-level governance that is needed in cities through an action called the Living-in-EU Support Action. And that will be the way we will organize and support the development of these sustainable solutions, as I said, for cities in Europe. So that's just in a nutshell how we see the context. Yeah?
Great, fantastic. Maybe easiest if you pass the mic on.
Yeah.
We can go around with this.
Okay, so I work in DG INPA, that is the DG in charge of international cooperation. So basically, we are basically externalizing the EU policies. So when we talk about principles, all the principles that we are, let's say, mentioned by Christina that applies to EU, we make sure that we translate this in our international cooperation. And also when we discuss policy, of course, we are taking a lot from the EU policy to mainstream what we do in the international cooperation. There is not a specific policy on smart cities. You can understand this, but we have two solid pieces that are our, let's say, policy on digital for development that was made in 2017, and another one on sustainable cities of 2018. So by working on these two policies, of course, there will be quite a lot for smart cities. Then the other things that I would like to, two things I would like to mention. The first is that the strategic approach of the Commission is to work a lot at geographied level. That means that most of our funds are given at national and regional level. So this has been in practice, this was a strong reduction of programmatic or sectorial programs. So there will be no chance that we will see in the future a programs called Smart Cities, as we have seen a lot in the past, like, I don't know, Covenant of Mayors or slum upgrading. So basically, now the idea is that everything is moved at geographic level. And this is because we want to have more interrelation between the different programs. Because, for example, if you look at cities, we had cities in which there was somebody working on energy, somebody working on water supply, somebody working on slums. But then at the end, these programs were not related together and were not part of an integrated approach to urban development. So now we want to make a different approach and start from the national level. And we have a lot of tools on this. Maybe I can talk later about this in the next point, let's say. But I also want to mention as the last things the global gateway that I think everybody is aware, I hope at least. And in Global Gateway, we are basically making an offer for increased investment and increased partnerships. And we are looking not only at hard infrastructure, but we are looking a lot on the soft components. And when we talk about connectivity, of course, also the connectivity of cities is important. And we are making, for example, an interesting work on transport corridors, and maybe you think that there is nothing to do smart cities with smart corridors, but in fact also using the EU approach to the TNT model, where they see the nodes, and I think Hamburg is one of the nodes in one of the TN corridor, in fact, and there is a lot of potential to develop, let's say, smart cities, integrating this in this corridor. So you see that we are looking for a more integrated approach. So we want to get out of a niche, let's say, and to get something that is more integrated.
Thank you very much. And I think, Martina and Paolo, thanks for your contribution. And in fact, I would like to highlight also that we are working very closely with the European Union and European partners, because this region is quite advanced, let's say, when it comes to the discussion of people-centered smart cities. And I think it was at the beginning of February this year that France, in fact, invited us to a discussion on principles for people-centered smart cities. And I think for us, it is really something that we try to translate into different regional contexts. I think from the perspective also of, let's say, the discussions we are observing here in Europe. We would like to, in fact, assist, in fact, our member states to embrace those principles within their national urban policies, within their, let's say, local action for impact. I think it's very important. 2030 is around the corner. Sustainable local development, let's say, with an aerial approach or territorial approach is really, if we don't speed up the solutions and accelerate, in fact, addressing urban challenges, we will not achieve those very ambitious targets. And I also always say the targets 2030, the future doesn't stop there. We continue. Cities keep on growing, and I think we need to really also embrace, let's say, urbanization processes in the future as well. And I think within certain, let's say, transformational agendas that the world at the moment faces, which includes the climate crisis, which includes crisis, which includes pandemics, endemics, let's say, how are we bringing this into a contemporary society and assist cities to understand that? And not only from a European perspective, but really from cities that are left behind, let's say tertiary cities, secondary cities. We have those also in Europe, in fact, and how we can actually assist this planet in a homogeneous way to really look at the opportunities that are at our hands, the new tools that are at our hands to really accelerate the development impact at the ground. I think that's maybe what I would like to contribute, and I hand over to you, Wiebke.
Yes, thank you very much. So I work in the European Commission's Department for Research and Innovation, and I mean, you'll see that we work very closely together, so the principles, the ideas, the approaches are quite similar. We are now a small way into our new framework program, Horizon Europe, which is the big EU research program for the coming years. And there, one speciality that I would like to highlight here is that we're trying to work with new governance models for research cooperation and also with new forms of citizen engagement. And that takes the form of, for example, partnerships with industry, partnerships with member states, and missions. So there are 5 Horizon Europe missions, and the one that is most relevant here, of course, is the Climate Neutral and Smart Cities mission, which sets itself a goal of having 100 cities in Europe climate neutral by 2030. I say it right from the beginning, I was very sad that Hamburg didn't apply. But this is not the end of the road at all. It's also a plea, please stay in touch. And there are lots of ways of getting involved at a later stage. And we need Hamburg. We see there's so much going on. So just as a small aside to get it out of the way. How we work there is, as part of the city's mission, is to really, as Christina said, using digital technologies as an enabler. So working with the various different sectors, and as Paolo said, in a cross-sectoral approach, holistic approach, to have game changers, to have really very quick progress in a very short time. We've just announced the cities that we are going to work with. But it will be, and it was quite a huge process, and it will be a big flagship also to involve many more cities in future. So the idea is to work based on a very concrete target, based on needs of the cities, and with a very close involvement of citizens. And we're also very keen to export that approach globally. You've probably heard of Mission Innovation, which is the international branch of this mission approach. And there's also an urban mission there, the Urban Transitions Mission. in which the UNFCCC is the Global Innovation Hub is actually a partner from the beginning, and we are very grateful for that cooperation. So in there as well, digital transition is really one of the enablers, one of the pathways to climate neutrality, and an enabler on the way to enable cities, to empower cities to make the steps that are needed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have 4 microphones, but we are using only one. And I'm not saying this only for observation, because my concern is that, of course, we have now a huge diversity of initiatives. Yes, there is a coordination of policy principles, of main values, both at the EU and at the UN level. These two strands are also quite well aligned. And then we have lots of things being done. That's great, that's diversity. But with this kind of diversity, even if united at the level of principles and values, also comes fragmentation. And when you have this degree of fragmentation, everyone is doing something about digital. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but if you look at United Nations, which here in Brussels our team consists of 30 plus different representatives of different programs, funds, and specialized agencies of the United Nations, everyone is digital. Food and Agriculture Organization is now doing digital agriculture. There is, of course, digital education. There are digital women. There is digital health. Everything is digital. So this fragmentation often does not allow us to look for synergies. And we should also think about how we could achieve those synergies. And I mean, it's an easy answer to say that, you know, we have to ensure that there are flows of information. But I want to go where Paolo went a little bit on the European Union, because we at the United Nations have exactly the same. I mean, the whole reform of the United Nations in the past several years is to strengthen the work at the country level. The new system of resident coordinators, and I won't go there. That is where this fragmentation becomes confusion, because if you look from a point of a mayor of a city or a minister of the government, many of this huge diversity around the world starts at some point going to the country level. And that is where diversity, which just turned to fragmentation, is turning to confusion, because a poor country cannot afford to reject anything, because the needs are immense. And what they're getting all these very different proposals from private sector, from different international organizations. And what can we do about this? And I want to give just one very simple example, because it's also very recent. Some years ago, the European Commission, together with the OECD, initiated the work of a new definition of degree of urbanization, which was initially applied for the European Union. And then we worked quite a bit together, and we said, okay, this could have a global value. I will not explain how and when, that would be too long. But you can imagine. Then we put together a consortium, which of course is the European Commission, including the Joint Research Center, OECD, which has great capacity for handling different and analyzing different kind of data. We bring in the World Bank, that has a lot of funding programs on the ground which are related to different things in urbanization. We bring in the Food and Agriculture Organization, because if UN Habitat is dealing with human settlements, they deal with the hinterland in between. And I think we achieved a lot in the sense that this new definition has, a couple of years ago, been adopted or endorsed by the UN Statistical Commission. And just a week ago in New York, my colleague Annika, I don't see where she is, she conducted a workshop in New York to bring in other UN agencies to use the same approach. UN Fund for Population Affairs, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNICEF, and other big agencies. So please allow me to conclude that we need to do something about overcoming, celebrating and using the diversity, but also overcoming this fragmentation. And I think that bringing more actors around the table, as we are partly doing today, is a good start. And I would be very happy that if we can continue with that. Thank you very much. Back to Pontus.
Should I take this mic here? Is it working?
You are moderating.
Thank you, everyone. Lots of really, really good stuff there from the Living in the EU movement, discussions about governance, about how to bring this down to the local level. And I completely agree with Paulius that there is need to kind of overcome this fragmentation. And I've been following the smart cities field for about 10 years now. And we've come a really, really long way. I mean, there's the Smart City World Expo, which is in Barcelona every year, which I know several people here have been at. And you kind of, if you go there, you see the kind of how the industry is kind of changing. And it's really gone from this marketer's smart city that Katja mentioned earlier to something much more kind of comprehensive about how digital technology can be used in cities. And the people-centered approach that we keep talking about is coming out really, really strongly. But there's still a lot of fragmentation, and a lot of it comes down, I think, to governance. Several of you mentioned governance as well. And if I may just compare maybe the smart cities or digital technologies in cities with urban planning. Urban planning, I mean, there are lots of different regimes of urban planning around the world. We don't necessarily feel when we write a paper about urban planning that we need to define it. We just accept that we know what urban planning is, even though it's done differently. Smart cities, we are not really there. Many papers have to start with this definition of smart cities. And I think the reason for that is because of this governance. In planning, we are really clear about what is the responsibility of the public sector and what is the responsibility of the private sector. Public sector sets the rules of the game, does spatial planning, and then the private sector builds and implements. Sometimes they're hired by the public sector to it. In kind of tech in general, in smart cities in particular, this is really confused, and it's a lot because there's such kind of inequality in capacity. Like almost all the capacity on tech is in the private sector, and this kind of inequality or this imbalance is not really helping us at all. And I think it's not to say that we should completely change the technical competence will be in the private sector, and the private sector will build stuff and they will create amazing products and innovations and so on. But we need to sort out this governance element. Like we wouldn't normally have in a city an engineering company going to a local government to propose where to build a road and then proposing that there would be a toll road and that they would get the income. But we need to sort this governance, and we see some member states are starting to do this. Germany, for example, in January this year published national guidelines on data governance in smart cities. We see things like the Living in the EU movement happening at the EU level, and so on. But we at UN Habitat are hearing more and more from member states and from other stakeholders that we need to move towards some kind of global understanding to solve this issue that also Paulius mentioned. And so I wanted to ask the panelists here, if we start thinking about kind of some global principles around smart cities, around people-centered smart cities that go beyond technical standards and really start looking at things like governance. What kind of things might we want to include there, and how could we potentially collaborate between the EU and the UN in the way that Paulius has outlined? Can I pass this over again? Yeah.
In order?
Yeah,
okay.
It's probably the easiest.
By the way, Hamburg is not a member of the living-in-EU and has not signed the declaration yet. But you still have until the end of the movement to sign. Today, I'm happy to show you where the declaration is online, by the way. And this declaration, by the way, says a number of interesting principles, but before I list those, because they're very specific to smart cities issues, there is, let's say, more generic principles that have been released by, actually not by only the Commission, but also by the other EU institutions. It was a solemn declaration on digital rights and principles on the 28th of January, and they say, let me read them to you. The proposed principles are putting people and their rights at the center of the digital transformation, supporting solidarity and inclusion, ensuring freedom of choice online, fostering participation in the digital public space, increasing safety, security, and empowerment of individuals, and finally, promoting the sustainability of the digital future. By sustainability, we mean environmental sustainability. And so these are, for me, I think I would say it's a good basis to start with if you ask me which principles should we work on. And more specifically, in the area of smart cities, I would refer to the declaration that talks about a citizen-centric approach as well, the citizen-driven and open innovation ecosystem that we need, ethical and socially responsible access, management, and usage of data. That is very important, and we're working on this, by the way. And interoperable digital platforms that are based on open and interoperable solutions. And this is very important to ensure digital sovereignty and control over your data. So again, another principle that we believe is very important, because this is how in the digital area or in the digital space you transfer values such as freedom of speech, of the non-discrimination rights, and you transcribe them actually through this kind of principles. So it's very important for us that they're also reflected in those digital principles. Now, in terms of how could we move on and discuss these principles, or perhaps make them a little bit more formalized, or how far do we want to go? I would say this is up to all of us to decide. If you propose me a UN resolution on those principles, I would be very happy. Are you willing to go that far? I mean, we could discuss it. But I think that Europe is very keen on showing what is needed in order to have a society that is putting the human in the center, and that is respectful of those number of values. So that's just the beginning of our conversation. Yeah.
I can be very sure that I say I subscribe to all the... But I would like to add something that for me, what is sure that a principle is that we should not driven by technology in these smart cities, because in fact, when we come to the discussion public-private, this is also an important issue that, of course, mayors of cities in our partner countries are approached by everybody that's selling his product. At the end, these products are not interoperable. There are different platforms working, and these platforms are not exchanging information, not exchanging. They are actually using the data to make money. So these are all issues that are important to stress. Are not only principle, but then needs really the applications. Also, I said that we are working country by countries. We have also to be, when we come to the digitalization, it's a very sensitive issue and thematics, because we have, let's say, other model of digitalization that are completely different from this. Basically, you reverse all these principles, and you have the authoritarian model that is the model of surveillance that use all these platforms to control citizens, in fact. So we have to be, and this, unfortunately, this model has been exporting in many countries in Africa, for example, also in Latin America. We have to be careful when we are supporting countries and we are supporting, let's say, with projects, because we can end in supporting, let's say, networks that are run by, let's let's say, industry or by stakeholders that are applying this authoritarian model. So this is very difficult. This is why we should probably go and reduce the fragmentation, but going at national level and to understand what is happening at national level, and from there to start and to make in place, let's say, a concrete, let's say, program that looks at all these kind of important things. Because it's not a matter only of writing principle, but really to as you said, important that these principles are embraced at the level of UN, at the G7, G20, because there are always difficult discussions there. But the other things is that these are implemented concretely, let's say. Then I would like to say something on Team Europe, but maybe if there is a third round, then I keep this for the third round.
Thank you for allowing me to connect actually the two contributions. So Martina, in fact, Christina, sorry. In fact, yes, we would like to embrace this whole discussion on the principle side, because I think it allows not only national governments, but also the cities to see they are not alone in some of the questions they are, facing, let's say. And so I think for us, we are really trying to mobilize member states to demand us, to give us the mandate to really draft or craft with our partners together such principles. I think next June in 2023 we have our Habitat Assembly where we will hopefully have a resolution that allows us to work really on that, but already we are working in this direction. And then Paolo, I think the key issue indeed is how do we go local? And I think the national level very often is also just an intermediary level, which we cannot forget. But I think at the local level, very often imagine a local government that is being approached by a private sector entity and say, you need that technology. And in fact, as you say, information is power, information is money. And very often, basically, cities procure systems that strangle them for quite a few years to basically go through that journey, which is not at all actually embracing the benefits that are promised. And so I think that public-private model is quite interesting. And I think I have also observed, while I very much promote a kind of a challenge-driven innovation approach, but very often, especially when it's also led by the private sector, you have a parallel system where private sector companies basically do not connect to local government, but they are generating their own data and it doesn't feed into policy making at local level. And I think for me that is a key question of governance. How do we translate principles into action and impact on the ground? And I think very often we do not have this connection there. And I really do see if cities talk to each other and give each other hints on how to embrace this. And one doesn't have to be ashamed of asking certain questions. It's quite good. And I think, Pontus, maybe I would like to also promote our idea of actually having a kind of a help desk for cities where they can call and say, we have this procurement discussion here at the moment, how have you handled it? So that basically, they can get the guidance as they move through the emerging challenges that are related to this kind of private-public sector discussion. And I think for me also the other point I wanted to raise is how do we go to scale? I think from the national to the local, back to the national, and then horizontal to the different entities. And I think that is also quite a complex journey, which has a lot of cultural dimensions. Paolo, you highlighted that the European scale has of course values that we all support. But, American model looks different, the African model looks different, the Russian, the Chinese. I think, we need to see how we can support, those values without being too prescriptive, but allowing people to own them in the different contexts. So I think that is maybe what I would like to see. And if there's a third round, I have also more points to add.
There will be a third round, yes. So no, because thank you very much, but there's very little left to say now, because you just already said the points that I also wanted to make. But indeed, as you said, cities learning from cities. No, I think talking to cities as we were preparing our cities mission, that was something that came out very strongly. That cities really very much appreciate this direct contact, and then just asking, as you say, how did you do this? Can we do the same? So this, to me, this really needs-based, people-based, city needs-based approach would be really key to highlight. And that's, by the way, that is also how we have conceived this mission platform that we're working with as part of the city's mission, where that should be a hub where cities go and find each other, and also where they find technical expertise from the right experts, which also should partly address, Paulius, what you said earlier about the multitude of different programs for cities. So this is really an offer to cities to really to have a clear direction, clear guidance of where they can find the right information. Yes, otherwise, it has already also been said, a holistic, cross-cutting approach, and highlighting also co-benefits and synergies. I think then if you start somewhere, for example, on digital technologies, then you see also benefits in other areas. And we're working, for example, also in a partnership on connected and automated mobility, and where you see then that if you put it together in the bigger picture of also other mobility modes, the public transport offers, the active mobility that we want to foster, that then these principles, then they come to life, they make sense, and they become something concrete that people can relate to also for their lives.
Thank you. I don't know why it always happens that I have to raise difficult questions. Maybe I like doing that. I'll leave something for the third round, but for this round, I'm deeply concerned that by speaking of the cities, by speaking of localizing, by putting all the emphasis on the mayors, we forget often that many regions of the world are not the same as Europe. And the capacity that exists at the city level is incomparable with capacity that exists at the cities in Europe. Hamburg, for example, even that is a city-state and free. So we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot by bypassing the national level. Because that is where the systems are created, that is where legislation is created, that is where decisions are being made. And so when we try to create capacity at the city level, sometimes it's not doable without at the same time trying to create a framework in governance terms at the national level. So I think it is very important to remember, especially in the digital, where so much is based on key principles or key issues that Paola mentioned. If it is an authoritarian state, what much can you do to help the mayor? Because there is someone else calling the shots. So I think it is important to keep this in mind. And what we have seen in our other work with the European Commission, in particular in the case that I already mentioned on the global definition, which has a lot of digital dimensions and data and everything, is that what helped a lot, and is still helping, is having a special or dedicated effort to build the capacity for implementation. Working with the statistical agencies in the countries and in the regions, trying to conduct different kind of capacity building exercises, because just coming and saying, look here, this is a great principle, or this is a good thing to implement because it allows you to do that, doesn't really help if there is no absorption capacity. And this is not about funding. You can throw all the funding you want at that, but if there are no people who are able to organize it at necessary level, this is not going to happen. So I think that is something to consider, And not only saying, okay, this is your menu, Mayor, I mean, you can have this, you can have this, you can have a virtual digital space and all that. There is someone willing to pay for that, but also trying to think how to build governance capacity that would use this for policy development and implementation purposes. Thank you. Oh, now I have 4 microphones again.
Thanks. This one's on, right? Okay. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I can see a lot of alignment actually here, which is fantastic. And we have 10 minutes left exactly, so let's do another round, and let's see if we can get practical. Then, we have alignment here. What can we do together? Katja, you mentioned our intention to discuss with the member states in UN Habitat's executive board about resolutions, etc., on this, and starting a process of international guidelines on people-centered smart cities. We have some experience in UN Habitat in this kind of work. The most recent ones, I think, are the international guidelines on urban and territorial planning, which have been really useful and been used by many, many countries to put in place their own national guidelines on urban and territorial planning. So if we're imagining such a process on smart cities, what do we need to do, and what could we potentially do together?
Well, first I think we need to go across those boundaries and silos you mentioned and work with the networks we have. So, in Europe we have 18,000 cities actually. So we do have also a lot of fragmentation, and every member state has a different governance. So we do, I sympathize with the fact that you say it's not so easy, you need to have a measured approach that is tailored to the needs of the cities you're trying to help. We are not imposing anything. We are working with a movement called the Living-in-EU, which is actually led by mayors themselves. We're just helping organizing and coordinating their discussions, but eventually they decide what are the topics they want to discuss. So relying on existing networks is, for me, the first step. We have OASC, the Organization of Agile and Smart Cities, for instance, which is actually a global network led by Europeans, but a global network involving also countries like Argentina, Brazil, Japan. So trying to actually share those values at the global level. And this translated in digital terms means working on interoperability to start with. So we have a lot of our colleagues and delegates who are now trying to speak with one voice in those international fora, like ITU, like UN, IEC, where we are discussing what are the solutions we need and how can we agree on open principles, open standards and solutions that would help us actually share data in the most efficient way. So that's just a starting point. It's a very pragmatic one, but this is where we're investing most of our efforts. Then on the more policy generic type of discussion, I believe that actually those initiatives like the ones that you mentioned, there is another one actually also at the global level where I think it's out of the G20 discussions, to European cities will participate to defining a number of principles. Again, we're happy to help. We have lots of ideas. The declaration is a good basis. So we can support the cities who will be representing the European views. I wanted to also mention the help desk approach, Katja. Actually, we're doing the same in the digital program. So we will have an action that will support cities who want to purchase open data platforms, and they will have a procurement template. They will have support to procure tools that are suiting their needs. They will have what we call a digital maturity tool to support them also in identifying what are those needs. So we need to be very pragmatic. We need to help where we are needed. And of course, I think the Commission and other organizations like the Commission worldwide can use their capacity to convene, the soft power dimension, which I think can be very effective actually, and can help go across member states, across countries, and sometimes rich cities, which are even leading the conversation in their countries, to create, let's say, a more soft but still very powerful network that can help perhaps find agreements where we fail to find them in a more formal and politically led type of setting. So this is how we're working, and I think it's, at the moment, it's the most relevant one that I can see. Thank you.
Yes, concretely, as I said, we have this strong, let's say, geographic approach. We have been making a programming of the financial framework from 2021 to 2027. And the result of this shows that through the dialogue with our partner countries came out, let's say, in each country, different area or 2 areas of work. And urban development is quite important, I would say. In some countries, really specific focus on urban development. In others, let's say, there is more focus on other areas, for example, the Green Deal, very important, where urban development is a component of it through, let's say, the green cities or things like that. So in our programming, so we define for each country these areas of intervention, and then for the important areas, we establish Team Europe programs. That means are very big program, big scale, in which there is a strong coordination between the Commission and the EU member states, in order that we can put resources together and to work together in coordination to scale up, let's say. This is very important because from our side we can put a lot of instruments, a lot of tools. We have a budget support where we finance a lot of decentralization programs, which are important, of course, for also for smart cities. Budget support basically is a facility where we transfer budget to the treasury of the government, and there is a program, let's say, that is agreed to implement reforms. And decentralization, of course, is one of the most important. Then we have technical assistance, we have our thematic programs, we have the blending where we mix, for financing infrastructure, we mix grants with loans from the banks and the private sectors. We have the guarantee schemes also where we have a window on cities. And we have also a program of decentralized cooperation where we put together, let's say, local government from Europe to support local government from, let's say, Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And we have an interesting list. We made 3 calls for this, 3 calls of proposal, and we came out with about 65 projects in which there are involved big cities in Europe like Barcelona, Madrid, Berlin, Paris, Milan, and many others, let's say. And also in very important cities in our partner countries. So by doing all this, we are really trying to boost this Team Europe approach. And I think that with that, we can really increase the coordination. The last things I want to say is that within the budget that we have, we are supporting the creation of a facility and a platform. So with this program, the platform is supposed to be a kind of coordination that we would like to start to discussing also at the WOOF, if possible, maybe, let's say, at the margins of WOOF, informally with the EU member states, UN Habitat, and other stakeholders, how to strengthen our, let's say, capacity. And for us, the idea is to start, in fact, working at national level and to look at countries where we are putting a lot of money and see also where Germany or France, which are the big donors, are putting money, and to start looking at what we can do there. And this, let's say, platform of discussion will be also supported by facilities where we have a big technical assistance scheme, where we could have experts to also to send to the countries to support them. We can have, let's say, policy work done and things like that. So through these things, we would like to scale up the coordination and to scale up the work that we do, and to bring maybe streams like secondary cities, smart cities, municipal finance, and all this kind of specific topics.
Thank you. I actually wanted to reflect Now I have a blackout. Wait, what did I want to say? Because I was just thinking about WUF. For us, we have in fact looked. We have done an extensive survey of Latin American cities. I think I wanted to mention that here also, to understand, in fact, the confining dimensions that cities see in embracing the digital transformation journey. And this, I think, looking at the European experience, looking at the Latin American experience, we also would like to use this as an opportunity to really bring the different regions together and basically in a dialogue also explore where those principles, and going back to your question, Pontus, where the principles really can be anchored, and maybe there could be an enhancer in certain regions on certain aspects. For instance, in Latin America, of course, civil society is very strong, demanding rights. In other contexts, you have a strong, let's say, Paolo, as you said, the private sector that works at local level, supporting basically local governments, so let's say not only the mayors, Paulios, but really to bring them together and explore together how this journey can be done and how these global principles are useful for them at local level and basically at national level to guide cities across to go to scale. I think this is the point I wanted to make, and I think for the WUF years, of course, I think that is something we can explore together as we are also mobilizing member states that are very interested in this subject matter to see how we can collaborate on that. No, I think maybe Wiebke, you would like to add from your perspective, and I will not say too much, maybe to steal your show.
No, thank you. Yes, what do we have to offer from the R&I perspective? So, of course, we have an R&I program where also we are very interested in exploring different topics that could be very useful and could also help for the various things that have been discussed. In addition, I wanted to build on what Christina said about the convening power of the Commission. So we, as part of the global mission innovation, we are starting a global knowledge exchange center, which is based on a project that's going to kick off at the end of this year. And this, for us, should really be an opportunity, a way to bring different people together and to discuss these city-specific challenges, maybe based a bit on the European experience, but then also as part of mission innovation, we also have India on board, for example. There's a smart cities mission in India as well. We have the Global Covenant of Mayors, and indeed many networks, city networks also involved as part of our European mission. So ICLE, Eurocities, all these city organizations are there. So I think that is part of that project, but also building on that, I think that will be a very useful forum to discuss issues like that. And as the WUF has been mentioned several times, we also have a side event at WUF where also we'll be very keen to discuss and explore ways forward.
Okay. Okay. I'll say yes 3 times. I'll say yes to Christina to engage on seeing what United Nations can do, but broader than UN Habitat only, because the issue is broader. I mean, we can talk about the Second Committee of General Assembly and so forth. I'll say yes to Paola. Let's talk. Let's prepare something on the margins of the WUF and see how we can connect. I say yes to Wiebke. Let's talk and let's see how we can connect to the Global Knowledge Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulius, and thank you, everyone. So I'm going to talk about WUF as well. So WUF, 26th to 30th of June. There are lots of events. There's going to be an easy one on interoperability. There are other ones. There's also a special session on people-centered smart cities. So. Sorry, World Urban Forum. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. World Urban Forum in Katowice, 26th to 30th of June. So a number of events, and we'll continue this discussion there. Thank you so much. Great to have you here.